Yeah, my name is Guy Gronewald from Gronewald Fur and Wool Company, and the Trappers Association here in Illinois has graciously invited me to give a little talk on the market. And a lot of times I take this opportunity to ask anybody in the audience if they'd like to give a quick little market synopsis of what they think the market is before I give my talk. Does anybody want to give it a whirl? I mean, we've got to have one person that wants to, be for fun, always to be a fur buyer in that situation. The obvious bright spot is beaver, and everybody knows what those are going for. What they're used for. The beavers are bad. It's also a little bit of a political thing in the United States. It's sort of a, so we got that going for us. And in addition, the Hasidics, the conservative Jews also use a hat that's made with a felt hat that's made with beaver. That market is very good. Production is going to be higher this year, and there's going to be when you're buying a beaver for $5, you have a lot less risk than when you're buying a beaver for $20. And so I would assume what does anybody production will do this year? What do you think Illinois production will do?
What production?
Yeah, that's a very good point. What production? How many beavers were produced in Illinois last year? How many do you think? Come on, answer.
6,000?
6,000, Kent said. Anybody else want to guess? It's very difficult to know because some of the ones that did, like for nuisance and stuff, maybe are thrown away or something. But I would say 6,000 is a bit of a stretch. It's probably not going to be 6,000. This state was 85% wetlands at one time, and that's just unbelievable that maybe less than 5,000 beavers were produced. We have some major river systems going through the state, and plenty of water. Maybe not so much water this year, but that's unbelievable. So a state like Illinois is, I would assume, would certainly double this year. How many people are going to trap beaver this year? Raise your hand. Almost everybody in the room is going to trap beaver. How many trapped beaver last year? Almost the same amount. But who's going to trap more beaver this year than they did last year? Joe House is the only guy going to trap more beaver this year. I have a feeling there's going to be more than that. Yeah, no, I think beaver in a state like Illinois will certainly double. So you go from 5,000 to 10,000 or 4,000 to 8,000. That's not much of a stretch. But will areas like northern Wisconsin, Minnesota, will those areas double where there are some real numbers? Northern Michigan. Some of those areas I see will double. Who knows? Who knows what the trapper pressure is going to be? In the South, I would say, Arkansas, Louisiana, those areas, I would say, they'll definitely double. There's a ton of beaver down there. They're easier to harvest. Anybody ever trap in northern Minnesota or northern Wisconsin? No, yeah, it's a difficult proposition. Unless you do it, when ice breaks in the spring, and sometimes you only have a week to do it then, before the season's over. You have to chop ice. If you try and do it at the beginning of the season, you have a week before ice goes on. So the weather can really affect production up there. So weather will be a big issue. If there's double the beaver this year, can the market handle it? I've been asked that question 100 times. I don't know. I'm assuming so. If the market triples, can the market handle it? Like I said earlier, it gets to be, how much money do you have? Because I'm not going to carry inventory at those levels. At $5, I'll carry it, but I'm not going to carry. It costs a lot of money. You start talking, 20,000 pounds, 30,000 pounds, or 50,000 pounds is a lot of money laying there on a high-risk item. So we'll see what production is. We've talked to all of our customers. They all seem to be, relatively positive that is going to continue. It's something that's going to be here for a while, and we'll have some relatively, stable. The other thing is, with beaver trapping, that's a little different from raccoon trapping. Is like when the raccoon prices were high, it was really pretty difficult, to trap the population down at all. And, with beavers, that's an item that, can be harvested, and maybe you won't have as many the next year. So maybe you could have a year that goes up, and some of these areas that have an overabundance of beaver next year. So it's not is such an unlimited supply like a lot of the other fur buyers like Muskrat would be. Any questions so far on that? On the beaver?
So what do you think they'll open here?
They'll probably be somewhere around $20 a pound. And
A pound. No, these guys aren't gonna understand. So beaver gonna average here with that.
a green beaver, we don't like to talk about averages, but, a green beaver, could average, close to $20. So that gives you, some kind of an idea. And that's kind of where they ended last year. I don't see, starting off, I don't see a lot of difference there. Now, the one thing you do have to realize is, we could be in February, before it really happens in this market, as far as beaver go, because, there aren't any beavers really harvested before February in the grand scheme. Maybe in Illinois, maybe you guys are all done in February, but that's not how the beavers are harvested. I mean, in the South, you'll have some beaver production done by February, but none of the northern trapping has really even started. I would say, I bought in Wisconsin my entire life. I bought beaver in northern Wisconsin. I would say maybe not last year, but in the previous 10 years, less than 5% of the beaver were harvested outside of the spring ice breakup season. So 95% of the beaver in Minnesota, New York State, northern Wisconsin, Michigan, they're all harvested after the ice goes out. To see what the production is going to be, none of us will know for, darn near 6 months. What is this? We've got October, November, December, January, February, March. Really we won't know for almost 8 months, what production is going to be in the beavers because they won't be harvested yet. And we won't have any idea. So yeah, the market should stay relatively stable through, most of what you guys would consider your beaver season because, you guys are, pretty well ahead of when you're going to harvest your beavers. When do we close in Illinois this year?
31st.
The 31st of March. So, some of it won't quite be harvested, but, and then as far as ice goes, you guys, most of the state, 2/3 of the state doesn't get much ice anyway. So yeah, a lot of the hard by that. So, it really have a lot of time before I think anything will change. If you harvest, if you're in the southern 2/3 of the whole state, you might as well, you can have yourself sold before the rest of the market even knows what's going to, hit them. And, and it doesn't mean that there's beaver or anything. I'm not even insinuating that. But yeah, most of the beavers are trapped in the spring. Any other questions on beaver?
What about castor?
Yeah, the castor market, it's hard to believe that it's not going to get a little more difficult. Okay, Illinois is going to double, and that's only 4,000 beavers. I realize that. But, you start taking, the castor out of those beavers, a lot of the guys that are going to trap those beavers are not going to keep the castors. They're going to sell them. These extra beavers that are going to be harvested, they're just going to sell the castors. They're not going to make bait out of them. They're not going to retain them. So, you start to go to a place like Minnesota where, tens of thousands of beaver are harvested. And if they would double, and maybe they won't double, but, maybe they'll be up by 50%. It's going to be, we would think a lot more castor, produced. And, there's kind of a finite market, for castor. And, it was so good a couple years ago because, Illinois harvested 1,000 beavers and almost none of the castor was saved. A lot of people just threw it away, and the beaver were just nuisance beavers, so they really didn't market it. They didn't get enough to really market. And, even in the northern areas, there was, I'd say 2 years ago, I didn't really do, sometimes I do the numbers before I come to these things, but, the whole North American production of beaver, 2 years ago was, what does anybody want to try and guess? What do you think the whole North American production of, what's that?
2 million.
2 million? No. It was certainly under 100,000. the beaver production just 2 years ago was. So the hatter, probably a lot of those the diehard trappers, maybe they retain their castor and reuse them. So yeah, the castor market might be a little difficult. Any other questions on the beaver? All right. If you want to throw any of your questions in,
Sure. I think the thing.
make sure you speak loudly. We got to
I'll
get.
give you an example. I have several properties where I have to trap raccoon and coyote. Because that's my entry, that's what I can do for the landowner, so I can trap everything else and so I can hunt. So what am I supposed to do with these raccoons and coyotes that I catch this year?
Well, I mean, I'll start with
Central Illinois.
I'll start with the raccoon. I mean, a grease raccoon last year, in Central Illinois, and certainly had some decent value. I mean, and I would suggest that those prices will be lower this year. Now, I mean, if you really figure your time for going out there and harvesting it, and especially if you put it up, if you sell it, it's a little bit different. But it's going to be very difficult to get your money back on that. It's just being honest. And on a coyote, I don't know where he harvested this coyote, but this didn't come from Illinois, and
Not Central Illinois.
Not Central Illinois, certainly. And the coyote, thing is very, very difficult in Central Illinois. I mean, even a good, Central Illinois coyote is going to be very, very difficult. And so I guess, they're kind of two totally different items in the fur business. I would suggest, and I'll talk a little bit about it right now. Unfortunately, when I give these talks, a lot of times I have to talk about ranch mink and ranch fur. And the reason that we have to do that is because it is so important in our pricing. And what we're looking at in the wild fur business is basically a raccoon, a red fox, a gray fox, a muskrat. They're all basically ranch mink today. And they fluctuate with the price of ranch mink almost exactly. They're used for commercial coats in China mostly. And when ranch mink went up a bit in the winter, this past like January, February, and we definitely, just that little bump, that 10, 15, 20% bump, we kind of felt that. And then of course, in March, April, May, the prices, the Chinese economy was a little rough, and the prices on ranch mink came down, and the auctions reflected that in Scandinavia, and it was kind of a difficult time selling raccoon. The last sale at Saga in Helsinki and Copenhagen, here a couple weeks ago was a little stronger, and we've seen a little better interest, in those items. But so to tell you a little, I'm going to be very brief about this ranch mink thing, but there was around how many produced in the Western world, maybe 10 years ago? How many do you think? It won't be wrong, guys. Come on. Just in the Western world.
40 million?
40 million. Anybody else? How many? Not 200 million, but somewhere between there. Okay. Maybe, they're good guesses. I really appreciate it, guys. 70 million, maybe, something like that. That's, ones that went through auctions, ones that didn't go through auctions. And how many do you think are going to be produced this year? 70 million to what were produced this year. Anybody got a guess? 10 million else? Maybe 6.5 million. So maybe 7 million. So we're at 10% of where we were. Some of the reasons for those massive productions were, if you're, a lot of it was going to China, and it was an industry that was growing. Imagine if you had no grain business in this country, and all of a sudden we decided all to farm, and there was no farms. Think about the amount of grain it would take just to fill all these bins, right? Well, all those manufacturers, all those dealers, all those retailers, they all needed product for their, shops a lot of those places probably weren't needed, but they needed, everybody needed 10,000 skins. Well, it exploded the market. So now we're down to 6 or 7 million skins. The last year, this past year, I think maybe Oh boy, these numbers might not be perfect, but somewhere around 18, 19, 20 million mink were marketed, okay, at Saga and Copenhagen. Copenhagen will be done after August of next year. They have 3 sales left, and that's it. They're done. They have no more mink after that, as long as they sell them in these next 3 sales they have next year. And Saga is down to 4 million skins maybe, and the AME, American Mink Exchange, here has got 1 million skins or so. So we are at levels that we won't have enough mink produced in the world or the Western world to supply what was just purchased this past season. And not only will we not have enough, we'll have about a third of what was used this year. So in saying that, what's the next question? Anybody? We're going to have a mink within 18 months is what we have now, is what was purchased this year. How do you, what's the question?
What's going to fill that gap?
Yeah, what's going to fill that? Can they raise the prices, of garments to maybe get people to start gap, to raise more mink? Okay, or will they use wild fur? If the prices go up enough, yes, they'll use wild fur, sure. So the question is, if they raise prices in China on these garments, will they purchase them? Will the consumer purchase them? Joe, if they raise your pickup price, by 50%, are you going to still buy it? He'd sell it. Okay. So that's the question. So right now, the cost to produce a ranch mink is what in this country? Anybody want to know? Close to $40. Very good. Very good. Have you heard this before? Yeah. He has heard, and he got one of them wrong, and he's heard it before. So maybe a little less than $40, depending on what type of rancher you are. And the average purchase price at Saga in Copenhagen was, anybody want to guess before he ends?
I don't know.
What's that? 27-ish, something like that. Yeah. So we almost need a 50% increase to maintain our mink industry, or to keep the guys that are remaining in it, because in the short term, yes, they can produce at a loss, but in the long run, they can't. So, we either get, that kind of increase. Well, if we get a 50% increase just to take them where they break even, which isn't in the industry, that's going to be very helpful, in our industry. So, wild mink, raccoon, and I would even suggest that if we saw that kind of an increase, this year, that a raccoon would maybe even start to be profitable in areas, to trap where there's, a lot of raccoon. If you don't have any raccoon, it's not real profitable. But there's some areas, in Illinois where it's, population numbers are pretty high. Guys with dog proofs can catch a lot of raccoon. But when you ask a retailer, a wholesaler, or a manufacturer, if mink price went up by 50%, and you said, would you still be able to sell coats? What is the first answer by every person in China when you ask them that question? Anybody want to answer? No. Of course, they're going to tell you no. We won't be able to sell anything. We're not doing great, and we're selling 50% below that right now, and we're not able to sell out, just perfectly. So, but the good thing about that is anybody that you ask, will say the exact same thing. No, if you raise my price by 50%, I'm probably not going to be able to sell anything. So, we don't know until it happens, but it is going to have to happen, or there just won't be, any product. And so, we're gonna find out, and it's basically they're going to have to raise the prices by 50%, and we're going to have to raise the prices by, I could tell you what the raccoon quantities have done, and everybody knows, what raccoon quantities have done in the past, 10 years. I think 2 million. I think there was 2 million beaver produced 10 years ago, and last year in North America, how many raccoon do you think were produced?
200,000?
Less than a quarter of a million.
Definitely less. Less. He said 200. You said 250,000. I would say it's maybe less than 125,000.
In the 90s, it was like 2.5 million or so.
Yeah, maybe 2.5 was maybe the very biggest year ever. It's some of those years was difficult.
one year, didn't Napa have close to 2 million consigned?
I don't know. I mean, we handled like 490 one year. So yeah, I mean, it was, yeah, there were some crazy quantities. So yeah, we're at quantities that are, very, very small. And, the other thing is, if these prices don't go up on, say, ranch mink and, to a lesser extent, wild fur, which is not the quantities, but, when we start talking, dressing places, places that tan the skins, they don't have the critical mass. They don't have the numbers, to maintain, an industry to tan and to dye, process the. We have to actually get, these prices to where basically we still have an industry. So the ranchers are facing, actually a more dire situation than we are because they really have nothing, that's profitable. Maybe a few fancy colors in the mink, and that's about it. We have beavers. The otter market has, gotten a little better the last couple years. Who thinks the otter market could possibly suffer this year a little bit, and why? What's that? Yeah, beaver production, sure. Just like I said, there'll be more castor. In the South, many of those states have no limits on otters, and their otter is the otter that everybody wants because it's a paler otter. So it'll those numbers will definitely go up. I'm not saying the market will go down at all, and we're going to be sold out here very shortly on otter. So we're certainly going to be open to buy, and we're going to start off at similar numbers to last year. But like the beavers, otters are harvested a little bit later, and I guess in the South they're we see what those numbers are going to be. Go ahead, Kent.
That otter market is more of a traditional Chinese market with a very limited, it's not an unlimited amount we can absorb. So.
Yeah, it is still a religious or Tibetan type market in China. That's where most of them go. They make a few hats in China and stuff, but most of them still go to that Tibetan market. And yeah, it's just not an unlimited market. So, the price kind of is creeping up because there really wasn't many produced, just like there wasn't many beavers produced. So there could be, I would be a little bit cautious on the otters. You guys can only trap 5 here, right? 5 here in Illinois. But yeah, we'll start off okay on that. I kind of, any questions on any of the markets like the ones I touched on with the, yeah, basically that's, go ahead. You had a question? No.
Well, I just wondered, what are you're talking about mainly raccoons. Are raccoons going to be do anything with or not?
Well, I mean, we have some before I actually started speaking asked me if I had our fur routes up for the year yet, and I told them that in reality, October and November are very big selling months for us. So it's kind of being a little bit profitable for you. I mean, we can go around and buy beavers, and yeah, we buy a few raccoon along the way, and that's great. But if we want to set up a raccoon route, it's got to be profitable for the trappers. So we're kind of waiting because, every day, we get a report from China, and like I said, it's closed until Saturday because of the Moon Festival. But, we'll get, we'll sell, we could sell almost as many raccoon because our year basically for the year, we record our numbers for the year. But from March until now, and from now until, November or maybe Thanksgiving, we could sell the same amount of coon. So, we could sell exactly sold. So, if we do that, we'll certainly be more aggressive, to buy the raccoon. And the other thing is, mink are also selling in that same time frame. So, let's say that, the prices were up a bit in Copenhagen and Finland. Those mink, they go to Thailand, they go to Cambodia quickly, they're dressed, and they start, trickling into China. And he says, yeah, hey, these mink are selling $2 higher than we thought they would, than the auctions. And, it'll definitely have, just that quickly, it'll have a bearing. I mean, we changed raccoon prices during the year last year. We started off, relatively cheap, and then, January, February, we really, were selling well. And so it's really I haven't sold as many coon as I'd like from March until right now this year. We've sold less actually than last year. And last year, we had to deal with COVID lockdowns in China, and this year, we don't. But what we're hoping is all of the northern cities in China where a lot of the furs are sold, had to deal with lockdowns. Okay, so in other words, maybe you're a retailer, you've bought 1,000 garments, you can't even get them into your city to open up your store and sell them. You want to make a guess on that one?
I'd
It's
like to make a comment on that.
yeah, go ahead.
I've done a lot of reading on China and the Chinese economy because it has such a great effect on our fur market. If you're in the middle class in the United States and you're saving money, most people are putting in things like stocks and bonds, right? If you're middle class in China, what you do with your money is you invest it in these companies that are building apartments. I don't know if anybody's heard of Evergrande. Well, these companies that do this have got probably close to $3 trillion in debt, and the debt's coming due. In fact, one of them, this Evergrande, actually went under. They had $350 billion worth of debt that got lost. So the middle class in China is nervous because this whole apartment complex building thing is crashing, it's collapsing. And so these people are losing a lot of their money.
Yeah, it's certainly
So
it's
these
the other
people
thing
buying
is
our fur.
what's that? And the other thing is just invest. They just buy apartments.
Or buy apartments.
I have lots of customers that own 3 apartments, and sometimes they haven't even seen some of their apartments,
And they're not selling.
and they're not selling. But the only good thing is about having cheap fur is, guess what? The coats with a more difficult, property sector in China this year, but the coats are relatively cheap, and we don't have to deal with COVID lockdowns. I mean, at this time last year, my customers were calling me and saying, Harbin is closed down, this city is closed down, my customer's got 1,000 coats, he can't get them into that's going to be a lot different. The only sales we could make were, places that were doing, internet sales. There was very little traditional retail, sales going on in China. So, we're hoping that, the fact that Chinese economy is difficult is important than the fact that the traditional stores that sell fur coats, will be open, and they'll be able to move. Really, as important as anything, they're able to move some mink coats, and to get this just darn near free.
For us, is it beneficial to put up the fur or just sell it?
Well, that's up to you. You know what I mean? Obviously, the more expensive an item is, the bigger difference it is. Which is kind of odd because it costs the same amount for us to do no matter what, whether it's an expensive skin or a cheap skin. We're always kind of a percentage higher, if it's dry. Okay, when raccoon were a $45 top, 10 years ago, we we're $2 difference. On an $8 raccoon is a $10 raccoon. So the difference is certainly not nearly as big. A beaver, I was here for the last guy talk, and he's a stretcher guy. Yeah, a beaver, the best beaver is going to have a fairly good size difference. It's just because as the skin becomes worth more, and it's more money, it becomes much more risk. And we'll be buying a lot of green beaver this year, and we won't get them processed, and for a while, and so you have risk. So you have to cover that risk. And I guess there's just not a lot of risk in a raccoon. So it's up to the trapper. I can't imagine. Some of these items like a muskrat. There's no choice if you want to sell it to us. It's got to be dry, right? And but with a coyote, it comes to be a couple $3. Which certainly a trapper can't do it for $2 or $3. Can't process it.
I think they had about 200,000 consigned this year, and to my knowledge, they did not sell many of them. And in fact, they usually sell a lot of that stuff private treaty during the summer, and I don't think they sold any this year. What are you guys going to be doing on muskrat?
Well, I can sell some muskrats right now. It's maybe a little better than I could in March, April. But you know, it's going to start off as a relatively cheap item. I mean,
$2?
a couple bucks probably. Yeah, yeah. It's going to be a difficult. How many muskrat trappers we have here though?
Well, a lot of muskrat trappers, but ask how much quantity.
Yeah, I mean, you know, if I came and gave this speech, you know, in 1985, that makes me seem really old. But I was graduating from high school that year. I mean, there is nobody here that would not have been a muskrat trapper in Illinois. I mean, this was a muskrat state. It was crazy with muskrats. You know, we really were not a very big raccoon state. And but yeah, this state has become, you know, not much of a muskrat state. We buy very few. So
I think DNR said they topped out 200,000.
200,000 in Illinois. The DNR said it topped out at. Yeah, I don't doubt that. And that so Illinois at one time muskrat our United States does right now. So yeah, that's, you know, and actually, you know, probably much more than that. So.
For those that watch YouTube, if you want to see a really interesting talk, the talk that he gave at Wisconsin is on YouTube, and it's really good, especially if you're interested in the muskrat. Pretty heavily focused on the whole idea of organizing wild fur as mink and not mink. I thought that was a really interesting way.
Yeah, and I broke coyotes out here because, you know, really, unfortunately, a coyote is, you know, just a blue fox today. Yeah, it was a coyote. It was Canada goose. And, you know, a beaver right now, you know, a few years ago, well, you know, today it's not being used as a ranch mink. And, you know, you see what happens when we get a product that actually works in this country, you know, what happens to the price because our quantities are just not that big. So, you know, the Western hat business is working, and look what happens to the price. This is not a ranch mink. We don't really want this stuff, you know, to be ranch mink. And, you know, we don't really want these, you know, to be blue fox because we see what happens when an item is not just a ranch mink, when they're actually what they are and they get marketed for something. Any questions on that? Or any other questions for that matter? And in talking about that, I think another important thing is to talk a little bit, you know, about the future of the fur business and, you know, sustainability. You know, everybody, you know, wants to talk about sustainability in an environmentally conscious world today. And, you know, I cannot speak for, you know, the companies that use these for trims, but, you know, almost everybody would think that these items, you know, and probably a lot of people think I'm nuts because I don't think that. But my opinion would be that, you know, if you take what their, you know, their cost of production was as far as the coat goes, that, you know, when they started using these, you know, they were, you know, they'd buy a strip of coyote. I would say fiber is, you know, you know, everything. And I always say this old, but, you know, today, and you know, 20 years even, you know, that was not the case. Every one of them. You cannot even. It's not whether you want to make. It's just polyester, and there's only reason is $1 a pound. How much does petroleum cost? What is petroleum? You know, oil in a barrel. How much? It's not going to be able to sell, and you know, companies have outlawed, you know, gas cars, so they've got to be able to their product, and they look at, you know, selling their product as close as a, you know, primary you know, outlet for their product. And, you know, that's the pressure we have price-wise is, you know, the consumer, you know, and yes, you know, throughout the world, you know, they want stuff cheap. And, you know, we'll have to, I guess we have to deal with that. So, but, you know, there is a chance that, you know, with the environmental movement the way it is, that people will, you know, demand, you know, maybe a natural product instead of something that goes into a landfill. It certainly, you know, I don't want to buy, you know, plastic stuff. You know, my sweater's wool, my pants are cotton, and I don't want that stuff on my.
So how big an impact would it be if more progressive countries in Europe, say like France, says hey, we're not gonna allow the production.
I mean, it would be huge, especially if the EU did it, and then that is not a stretch to see something like that happen. I mean, you can't. I think so. What's the stretch to think they wouldn't be able to buy? But that's our competition, guys. I mean, the animal rights people, whatever, they're a problem. They really have their facts, kind of misguided. But the fact that companies just want to buy stuff cheap. That's our biggest problem.
So what are we looking at this year for coyotes? Should we bother with them?
It's going to be a difficult. The little behind, the mink as far as production scaling down. There's still, for what's used in the world, there's more blue fox, relative to what's used than there is mink. The mink thing is definitely going to come to a head this year, and we could see some direct benefits. I mean, within 6 to 9 months, we're going to know what happened with this mink thing. Are they going to run out? Which we know they're going to. When I say run out, I don't mean they're going to have none, but there's not going to be enough produced this year for what was used, say, last year, or what's going to be used this year. So that's not the case with blue fox. That's still years out. There's a few more produced in China, blue fox. So that's a little more. You can get, I would be, positive on your otter, super positive on your beaver, and tentatively positive on items that compete with ranch mink, which would be, your raccoon, your wild mink, your muskrat.
Say, but I appreciate what Tim's trying to say here. Maybe I'm lucky, 1 in 10 around here, semi-heavy, the rest of them are all flat, right? Those coyotes that are, if I skin them, nobody's buying them.
Ones, I don't know what else. It's a difficult situation right now. Go ahead.
Yeah, guy, if you were to buy that coyote today, what would be the value?
That's not enough coyote, no.
That's probably a $20 coyote. And that's, what it is it's probably a CD Western, it's darker colored. It's I mean, so. What's that?
1 out of 100 in Central Illinois.
Yeah, you could actually get a coyote that looks like this in Illinois. What do you think this coyote would have for 3 years ago?
80?
No, more.
More?
This would have been worth more. So it would have been almost 100.
So
See, I
a green,
don't know.
so a green coyote you won't buy.
We buy a perfect one like this,
Okay.
Yeah. That's today.
It's in the green.
We wouldn't take it in the carcass, no.
No, I get that, but the skin is okay.
Yeah, I mean today, I'd probably be $5 tops.
Well, that's what it was. Okay.
Right.
You understand that?
Yeah. I want to. If I'm making a few bucks on those, everybody here can do the math.
Now, there won't be any more auctions, ranch mink auctions. I'm guessing.
No, we won't be told that here this year. Prices in China. That's the question. It's a big question.
Well,
And
if you're sitting here in Central Illinois and your average size, forget the quality. Your average size here is probably about a 2X. Would you guys agree? That's average. Bring the truck today. It's almost nothing.
no, not true. A dry coon. Anybody get? Yeah, we were aggressive. On a 3X, 4X, what did you get for a raccoon? He didn't have any that big. That's the first honest answer he's had all day. 2X dry coon. I don't know, for 5X, we were probably 15, 16, something like that. Yeah.
We just don't have any
Possum is this.
fence.
First thing is half the size of a raccoon. Maybe even a third of the size of a raccoon, okay? And so when you get a raccoon, and I touched on this with you earlier, how you grade an opossum, you might get 25% right. And the problem with an opossum is they have a very poor rate of dress, okay? In other words, you can send, 50,000 opossums, they end up with shedders and windows and just leather. Anybody ever had a possum sent off a possum to dress before? One guy ever sending this item that's worth a buck or two, a little tax to import it to Cambodia, and then you dress it, put another couple bucks in it, and 25% of them don't really dress, and they're not an expensive item anyway, and then you have 25% of them that are shutters or whatever. Well, those are worthless. So you pay tax on them, okay? You pay dressing on them, and most assuredly, you paid something for it. It's easy to take a chance on an opossum. It's kind of a pretty item if it does dress, and you can dye it crazy colors, and difficult item because it dressed so poorly.
It's a sad thing.
What's that?
And it's a sad thing.
And it's oh, we got Joe House here, yeah.
From the
Yeah.
possums and
All right, what else we got for questions? Did I touch on all the items, or?
Is there anything not worth bringing to the truck this year?
Well, I mean, any poor coyote, I wouldn't bring. Opossum, we're not really. I mean, if you stretch a really nice opossum, we'll give you something for it. From the water, because related to what a ranch mink brings. Complete. Yeah. What other questions we have? Come on, guys. We got a lot of guys here. How's my time situation going? Yeah, yep, exactly. We're going to probably continue. We talked a little bit about prices, but that's the way I'd like to talk about it. Yeah, we'll about where we started last year.
And what's the difference between selling you either in Greece versus...
Are you listening to me? I went up here talking. I already answered that. This is higher, a beaver, obviously, then there's more risk for us, having that green skin. It's going to be a while.
I'm sorry about
Oh, come on. I'm just giving you a hard time. But, a couple years ago, it was a couple bucks. And, now it might be $7 or $8.
Okay.
I don't think that's, maybe enough to, what does it cost you guys to stretch a beaver? What do you think? What do you figure it?
for the hatters, you basically got your own processing
Yep.
facility for beavers. And as we all know, beaver are not the easiest thing to stretch. On average, what would you say the difference in price between a green beaver that's just folded and frozen to you, or one that's stretched?
$5 right now. The market can go two ways. The beaver market could go up. It could. That's it doesn't have to get the same. It can always go two ways.
I'm glad you brought that up, Ken, because that's what during Golden Globe videos last year that you made, you told us don't waste your time putting them up because you were showing you were
Yeah.
through the planer or whatever.
Yeah, I wouldn't put, if it's a muskrat, we won't buy. I would put up. It takes 2 seconds to put up. An idiot like me can put one up in a minute. And a mink is easy to put up. A beaver is a difficult item, and really so is a raccoon. Answer, especially when it opens all at the same time. Yeah, probably in northern Illinois, I'd be okay with that. Where you're at, Joe, he's in the northern third.
They really have a burning desire to trap like most of us do, but because maybe they've sat up in their deer stand and seen a bobcat and think that they can bobcat on the wall. And that's great. I've been saying we need to go after these people.
They're not. It's fine if you need a regular trapper, and how do you get I don't want to call it a regular trap. That's all it is. We need supply business, but it doesn't really help the fact that we need numbers. Hey guys, if you have another question for me, I'll be around here. Thank you very much. Always love talking to you guys, and see you this fall. Okay.
You have some messages and a missed call.